there's a guy named Kyle Kulinski, and there's a lady named Krystal Ball, and they debated Briahna Joy Gray. And frankly, after Kyle's most recent arc, I'm rooting for him. Okay, I'm rooting and tooting for him. All right, I think he's great. So I think we'll maybe see not dipshittery from Breaking Points in a surprising turn of events.
Had an interesting conversation with Briahna Joy Gray about third parties and Cornell West. So set it up for the people. What are we about to watch?
Yeah, so some of the comments that I made about third parties and Dr. West's third party bid attracted a lot of attention, apparently, online.
Okay.
And so Kyle and I wanted to have a longer conversation. He basically shares my view on third parties, so we wanted to have a longer conversation with someone who's a good friend, Briahna Joy Gray, who has a very different opinion on this, so we could go through all the things, back
Hey,
and
tipster.
forth, etc. It's going to
How
be
you doing?
available on Krystal Kyle Friends Substack if you guys want to subscribe.
He's done a lot of growth in like the last 4 months. Like his opinions not that long ago were like very pro Green Party and third party voting. So like I'm really glad. Tipster, I'm doing okay. I'm a little zooted as a treat, but you know what? It suits this content, you know? Know what I'm saying? Also, if anyone would like to support me, feel free to throw some donos or subs my way over on riverboat.gg, preferably. Please and thank you. And yeah, I hope you're all enjoying the show so far. Hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Also, we have a ton of content going up on the YouTube this week. I like the other day I cranked out like 25 videos, so you please go check those out. I think some of them are some of the best work I've done. So go check that out, please, and thank you. Bye.
There you can get the whole thing on Friday this evening. Otherwise, we are going to post this clip now that you can watch and
Wait, this isn't the whole thing? All right.
enjoy and take from it whatever you will. Here you go.
Welcome, everybody, to a special edition, I'd say, of Krystal Kyle and Friends. Not only is it Krystal Kyle and Friends, it's also sort of like a dual thing going on. We got Briahna Joy Gray in the house, and this will be on her channel as well, the Bad Faith podcast.
Little crossover episode.
Little crossover episode.
Love that for us.
Definitely. Looking forward to it. So we're going to discuss Cornell West's campaign and everything around that. And I just want everybody in the audience to know, because I don't know if we've said this publicly before, that like he's been invited on multiple times and he just hasn't come on yet. And you know, this goes all the way back to when he launched.
Yeah.
We invited him on. He hasn't come on yet. You know, will he eventually? I don't know. You know, it's up to him. Ball's in his court.
Hey, Absolution
We
Zero.
had him on before.
Love when I join a stream for the first time and already recognize half the usernames. Oh, hey, Absolution Zero. Yeah, we got a good community of homies here. So like, if you know them, you must be a good bean too. So welcome.
He had him on before, before he announced his campaign. I mean, we're going back to when the People's Party thing launched.
Right.
We invited him on all the way back then too, and just haven't heard back or anything. But I just don't want people to think we're debating Cornell West, but like Krystal and Kyle are refusing to talk to Cornell West. We'd love to talk to Cornell West. We want to have him, you know, we'd love to have him on at any point in time to discuss anything and everything. So we're going to discuss his campaign a little bit here. And so I want to lay out what my position is, and then Brie, I'll turn it over to you.
You should lose the cheek fuzz. I don't know. You know, it's kind of working for him.
And you can respond to it, and Krystal, you can jump in at some point and say what your position
We'll go
is.
through all the things.
We'll go through all the things. So here's my, first of all, in the Democratic primary, because I'm a registered Democrat in New York, I will be voting for Marianne Williamson. Very happy and proud to say that. I'm the chief Marianne Williamson bro out there. I'm leading the charge.
Unsurprising.
Now, in New York, I'm in a safe state. So would I vote for Cornell West in New York? Yes, because I have a 95% agreement with him on policy, and I think it would be nice to get the Green Party in a position where if they become more viable because we get ranked choice voting or something, it'd be nice to grow their popularity a little bit. And when we get ranked choice voting, I think they kind of automatically become a lot more viable. So I'd like to help out in that process. But if I'm in a swing state and it's Biden versus Trump, I'm at the point now where I don't even think it's a tough call. I would definitely vote for Biden, because either in that situation, even if other people are running, either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And in my estimation, Biden has definitely passed what I would describe as my bare minimum purity test. And I think if it's him or Trump, or even him or DeSantis or anybody, he just blows them out of the water. And so
Fair.
I think I'd happily vote for Biden in that instance. Your response?
So I similarly was voting for Jill Stein in New York in 2016.
I did the same.
And I also happen to believe that strategically it makes the most sense to apply pressure to the Democratic Party by voting for not Biden in a primary. Marianne Williamson is obviously the most progressive candidate in the primary, and then vote for Cornel West in the general. And I know there are a lot of people in my audience who are frustrated by that plan because they think that it takes something away from Cornel West's run, or it affirms the Democratic Party in some way to vote for Marianne Williamson running as a Democrat. I don't feel that way. I feel it's a little hypocritical to have that position, given that we all just enthusiastically voted for Bernie twice in the primary the last 2 rounds. You can make a distinction saying that Bernie was an independent and he always identified as an independent, and Marianne Williamson doesn't have that kind of cloak of
No. The issue is that Marianne Williamson is not someone who is capable of running the campaign that's going to do this. You know, like, Marianne Williamson isn't going to, like, A, doesn't have the institutional support, like, hasn't spent an entire lifetime of building up favors to be called in, and number 2, like, frankly, like, has a history of being a crank. You know, like, she's like, hippy dippy woo shit. Like, she said some extremely questionable things in the past.
I've been watching for a while. Your content is awesome. Take me money.
Well, the poor, thank you very, very much for the $5 dono. I very, very much appreciate it, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Thank you.
distance from the Democratic Party. You can say what you want. I don't see those things as mutually exclusive in the least. So that is also my plan. I differ from you only insofar as that I would say it's a more difficult choice in a swing state to decide what you're going to do. But I frankly respect people who feel comfortable. It has not been something that I have to contend with, but I respect people who feel comfortable voting third party even in swing states. The reason is this, and it goes back to that early bad faith viral Noam Chomsky interview, in which I asked him about a month before the 2020 race. Look, I said, I take your point. Let's say.
Oh yeah, the Noam Chomsky interview where like he completely schooled her. Like, man, like she tried to pick a fight with Noam Chomsky, and Noam Chomsky, a frail elderly man, like just like absolutely decimated her. It was glorious to watch. It's viral for her being made fun of for how bad it was.
Trump is an existential threat. Let's say that he's a unique threat among all Republican candidates. My concern is that every year, because we all vote for blue no matter who, because most Democrats vote blue no matter who, or most left-leaning people do, the message that gets sent out is that Democrats don't have a bar. You can go as low as you want, as close to the Democratic Party as you, Republican Party as you want, and there's a ratchet to the right effect. And Republicans know that they can keep being more and more extreme. And so I want you to explain to me what you predict to be the stopping point at which we're no longer saying this new Republican is the worst that has ever happened. This new Republican is the worst that has.
Well, what has to happen is that you have to beat the Republicans, and then you have to build up like institutional support to get more progressives elected in the Democratic Party. That's how that works. That's how that works in a two-party system, which we'll have until, you know, states adopt ranked choice voting. If we have ranked choice voting, then like, okay, yeah, we can have a multi-party system, but we don't have that. So until we do, yeah, you have to work within the Democratic Party. That's how the two-party duopoly works. It sucks, but if you want to change that, you don't change it in a presidential election.
Ever happened. Tell me you're not going to be saying the same thing about Ron DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy or whatever other person comes down the pike.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna say that. I would love for a bunch of conservative candidates to run as third parties to steal votes from Trump. Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. Please run a Ron DeSantis campaign third party. You know, he might be not that popular, but like he'd still be popular enough to like make sure the Democrats would handily win the presidential election. You know?
And he was unable, in my subjective view, to respond credibly to that claim. So if somebody could tell me strategically what the stopping point is going to be of making this argument of the lesser of two evils, I would be
Hell yeah, Absolution Zero. It is possible to get ranked choice voting. You just have to connect with grassroots on the ground. Like that's really it. You have to connect with grassroots on the ground and in your state, and then push county by county and state by state. That's how it works.
open to the idea that, okay, this is the last one. Donald Trump, fine. He tried to steal the election, fine. That is a new line that he has crossed. But
I love that she's just like, yeah, sure, Donald Trump is a fascist who tried to overthrow democracy. It's just like, yeah. The fact that she doesn't find that to be a very, like, okay, and if you make this very clever point by voting third party, who exactly is going to be able to enact that in future elections? Because it's sure as shit not going to be the fascist who just tried to overthrow democracy.
absent an acknowledgement that we are creating our own destiny by lowering the bar in these ways, I'm not comfortable coming out and criticizing anybody who no longer wants to be complicit in that kind of a system that's enabled the Democratic Party to not have a primary, treat Marianne Williamson as badly as they've treated.
Just as an FYI, if a fascist came into power in the United States, like, your principled stand means nothing. It means nothing because the fascist, given enough power within the state apparatus, kills you. Not just like, haha, hyperbole kills you, but like actually just kills you. So.
Treated her.
Mm-hmm.
Treat Bernie Sanders as badly as they treated him, and openly come out and say they don't have to hold a free, fair election. The DNC argued that in court.
So let me explain a little bit of my position. I think that'll help respond to some of what you said there. And I'm also curious to dig in a little bit more to your analysis of how the Biden administration has actually been in reality. So last election in 2020, I did live in a swing state. I lived in Virginia, still live in Virginia, registered in Virginia. And it did not feel good to vote for Joe Biden, but I decided to vote for Joe Biden, which is something I said publicly at the time. But I said something very similar to you, which is like, listen, this was not easy for me. If you, wherever you live, swing state, not swing state, etc., you do whatever you analyze is the right thing to do. And the reason that I voted for him primarily at that time, even though I thought he had an atrocious record in the Senate, even though, complicit in the Iraq War, complicit in bad trade deals, complicit, like terrible things on crime, all that stuff, right? The primary reason I voted for him was because of the National Labor Relations Board. And because labor politics and building out union power in this country, to me, is one of the most important goals, and something that I think we all share and leftists generally believe. Now, in retrospect, not only do I feel good about that vote, he's actually surprised me. Now, I've got all kinds of issues, right? On the National Labor Relations Board, though, specifically, they just issued a ruling which could be a complete game changer for unions. And just to explain to people a little bit, basically, in the past, bosses could union bust with impunity, no accountability. Now, the process going forward is completely changed. If bosses are caught union busting,
wait, no, the bosses couldn't union bust with impunity. There were laws against it. It just the laws weren't really that enforced,
Then that's it. There's no more election. It's canceled. They have to recognize the union and start bargaining with them. That's the biggest shift in labor relations we've had in our lifetime. So that's why at this point, I'm not only, it's likely to, I'm a Marianne supporter as well, but we can all see the most likely outcome is it's going to be Trump versus Biden. Not only would I say that protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board isn't important enough for me to vote for Joe Biden, but it is important enough that I would actively encourage, but I'm not going to shame them for whatever they decide to do, but I would actively encourage people who are in a swing state to vote for Joe Biden, if for no other reason than to protect that board.
So I think that's a perfectly defensible position. And I had this conversation on my podcast in the last episode, and there were people who would characterize that position as, you've heard the thing, you've been on the internet, being too credulous about Biden, or, being too comfortable in one's own position in life and not needing enough change and being happy with the status quo. People will say things like that. I think actually that if your priority, if you believe the path to meaningful change is going to primarily come through a kind of, I don't say this dismissively, but a kind of labor incrementalism, meaning there are meaningful labor gains that happen, but are not the type of which would radically transform the system the way that some people want.
That's literally how we got better working conditions in America. Now those conditions have been eroded over time. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? Yes, making workers' lives better, even if it's incrementally, is good. It's better than the alternative, which is their lives get exponentially worse.
To happen in a shorter term. And the way that some people might argue Bernie Sanders represented his movement as the goal of being, then that's a defensible position. But I have to hold space for the reality that there are people for whom, even as significant as those labor gains are, it's simply insufficient. And what they see when they look at the trajectory of the last 50, 60 years of Democratic Party politics, when they read Listen Liberal and see the longer game of the Democratic Party making a concerted choice to back away from labor in a way that has gone on for decades and isn't...
Why would she learn anything, Erica? She makes like $20,000 a month on her podcast. Like why would she learn anything other than to do exactly what she's doing, you know?
Necessarily turning around as a consequence of Joe Biden having some good NLRB appointments.
So
let me actually
you respond, and then I want to jump into it.
So number one, I don't think that in like massively increasing union density, I actually don't see that as incremental change. I mean, if you look at the chart of the decline in the middle class and the decline of union density, you'd be hard pressed to find a more significant
Krystal.
factor. I made these arguments as well. But the other piece is, I feel like those same people who are right about the Democratic Party, they were right about the analysis in Listen Liberal, right about the fact that you had, this free trade bipartisan consensus, and in large part a union busting bipartisan consensus, also don't acknowledge that there actually has been a notable shift in the Biden administration. Now,
oh God, Absolution Zero. I did. I looked at it for like 5 seconds and was just like, this is why some people just need to get offline. So, some people need to get offline and just like, again, you don't even need to like actually talk with workers, but just like, I don't know, go in within like a mile vicinity of like any place with workers and just like talk to them like people. like I don't know, man. God damn it.
My big issue with the Biden administration, I mean, there's a million of them, right? On foreign policy, I've got problems. But my biggest issue economically with the Biden administration is the way they've allowed the pandemic relief, the short-term pandemic relief programs to fall away and leave a lot of ordinary Americans in a more precarious financial position now than they were at the beginning of the administration. And that's not nothing. But when I look at the long term, when I look at the fact that, listen, with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the CHIPS Act, with infrastructure investment, you're talking about industrial policy in a way that would have been completely unheard of in the Clinton-Obama era. When you look at not just the NLRB, which I said is like the core for me, but also his antitrust appointments and the fact they're...
Just jumping in right now to tell Riverboat Jack that your YouTube thumbnail game has been on fire lately. Yes! I've been trying to get better at making the thumbnails. It was a lot of work. Thank you for paying attention to it.
Really trying to reverse decades of neoliberal attack on any sort of trust busting. I feel like none of those improvements that have made Biden on that front way better than Obama, way better than Clinton, I just feel like there's no willingness to acknowledge any of that whatsoever.
I don't think the issue is acknowledging it. It's how much it matters to you, how weighty that is to you, and how much you...
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, your political calculus shouldn't be on how it makes you feel. It should be on the outcomes of the policies. Right? Like, oh, it makes me icky, but it will lift millions of workers out of poverty. Like, which do you value more? Which do you value more? Oh, it will make me feel icky, but it will prevent fascism. Oh, does preventing fascism make you feel icky? Well, too fucking bad.
See those kind of
Jesus.
meaningful, fine,
It's
call
not
them
that
meaningful
hard of a calculus to make.
improvements as really core to the nature of the project that you're on. And I think that what some people are frustrated by is that this went from feeling like, in both left media and left politics, a bigger revolutionary project that was going to the core of our capitalist system and wanting to radically change the way that human lives are valued, what we consider to be the nature of our social safety net, what we believe to be the nature of what we consider to be human rights. And they wanted to join a movement that validated what many of us felt intrinsically, emotionally for most of our lives, that something in the milk very much wasn't clean. And Bernie came along and articulated that
Alt-right
it
playbook
was
is really
legitimate
good.
for us to be asking for something
At least it
more.
was.
And so
I don't know
at
if
this
it still
point,
is.
it does feel as though there has been a kind of a bait and switch. It's not that what you're describing isn't true or legitimate. And I said this on my podcast. If your priorities are what you have kind of articulated your priorities as being, I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument. But I have to hold space for the fact that for many people, it simply is inadequate.
Wait, can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me jump.
Okay, but what would be more inadequate? The thing that is already inadequate, slightly improved, or fascism, which would be more inadequate, which would fail to meet their needs more?
Been here. So my issue is that many people on the left are, I would say, dishonestly refusing to acknowledge any good things that were done. We could all on the left list, like, here's the 57 things we hate that Biden did. But when something good happens, I'm the only one talking about it, and then I get accused of being a DNC shill. Now,
Well,
I'm not like, look, I'm not blind. I think in order to be intellectually honest, you have to look at, here's the good things that happen, here's the bad thing that happened. I'm going to give them all to you, and then you could judge how much you value each and which one you weigh more and how that factors into your like voting analysis. But I was like the poster boy back in the day, or people viewed me this way, as like, he's the purity tester. He's like the main purity tester guy. And I didn't vote for Biden in 2020 because I didn't think he would pass my purity test. Now, at the time, people could go back and watch the video. My purity test was super fucking lenient. It was like, if I'm convinced you're going to do like 2 or 3 of the things that I value highly, then I would vote for you. Because I know it's basically down to just the Democrat and the Republican, no matter how much we want to wish the Green Party or libertarians want to wish the Libertarian Party into existence. And so when I look at the record, again, I could list all the bad things, but you just mentioned the NLRB raising overtime pay, or you mentioned the thing where, you know, they automatically recognize the union if the bosses try to bust it up. There's also the overtime pay rule where now it's not $33,000.
Maybe we need to go back and rewatch them. Absolute.
Where now you get overtime pay. That's a huge change. Student loan debt reduction, and even Biden even coming back after the Supreme Court tried to slap it down, and he said, no, I'm going to try to do it through the Higher Education Act now. There's little things we could go after. Oh, the interest rate. Yes, that's bad. I agree with you on that. But we got to recognize that that is, all things considered, a step in the right direction. Pulling out of Afghanistan, he actually had the balls to do it, even when the media was shitting on him relentlessly. And I didn't see anybody on the left coming into his defense at that point.
I saw a lot of people.
I was like the only fucking one. It was like me and Matt Iglesias.
I definitely defended him.
Okay, well then it's like 3 people. I didn't, and all these. Oh, I'm so anti-war. He pulls out of Afghanistan, and it gets messy because that's what happens when you pull out of wars. And all of a sudden, oh my God, you know, it's the
I thought that was actually a good moment for the left. I saw a lot of consensus. Good on you, because we almost resented and kind of were enjoying the extent to which he was getting, you know, dogpiled by the mainstream media, and we were the only ones defending him. So I would quibble with that a little bit. But
I didn't see much defending him. I really didn't.
Kyle, what people are responding to, if I can offer this, is not the idea that you are accurately describing.
She's already so mad in this clip.
Advancements, good things that Joe Biden is doing. I think you could also say Obama did some good things.
No, Biden is way better than Obama, not even close.
That's not the point I'm making. Okay. It's not that one is better than the other. You could also sit here and say Obama did good things. Now, the way you bristled at me saying that, I could say, oh, why won't you just acknowledge that Obama did good things? The same way that you're saying that leftists won't acknowledge, they bristle when you acknowledge that Biden did good things. And it's because we have different standards.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's a really simple calculus. It really is. Do you want to feel good, or do you want to be anti-fascist? Which do you want? Okay? You gotta make a choice. I know which choice I would make. That's just me.
standards, and we're making different kinds of
But
comparisons.
that's not my issue,
wait,
because they're
but
not
wait a
even
minute.
acknowledging the good things,
But-
is my
but-
point. I have a list of 47 things here, and I've heard nobody talk about any of them.
But let me get to the core of this point. The reason that people are frustrated with that kind of analysis is because it's been used for so long by liberals to justify why people shouldn't be asking for more. I'm not saying that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, then bring up that criticism, but that doesn't have anything to do with voting. You like the question of voting is unrelated to that.
But if you bring up something like student debt, when the consensus of all of the student debt experts that I've talked to on my podcast, people from the Debt Collective, the Asher Taylors of the world, the legal experts I've brought on.
I can't believe people still pay attention to Briahna Joy Gray. She's just been one of the most consistent, like, disingenuous voices. I don't know if disingenuous is the right word, but like her political analysis is terrible. Consistently.
On is that there was a path toward doing this, to canceling all student debt, that would not have been stymied by the Supreme Court. The same authority that Donald Trump used to enact the student debt moratorium, which has been ongoing until beginning of this month for the last 3 years, was the same authority that he could have canceled all student debt with a stroke of a pen. He chose not to do that because he decided to means test the program. He circulated those documents. I got one in my inbox last August, I believe it was, to see if you qualify for student debt. It was a very easy form. But when he did that, that started the clock for people to be able to challenge it in court, which what 6 states did, 2 of them were successful, and now here we are today. Not only did he decline to do the unstoppable mechanism to actually cancel all student debt, he additionally chose to use a legal authority, which when many legal experts said was the most vulnerable.
Again, it's a simple calculation. All of this is obfuscating the simple calculation. Are you anti-fascist? If the answer is yes, you vote for Joe Biden.
One. So you're now saying,
No.
well, he could have used the Higher Education Act.
He did. He did. He invoked it.
He could have done that in the first instance.
But he didn't, and now he tried it again through the Higher Education Act. The idea that it's a conspiracy, he doesn't want to actually cancel it. No.
Yeah, vote for whoever in the primary, then vote for Joe Biden. There you go. Anti-fascism in 2024.
He appealed the case like 4 or 5 times,
Kyle,
and then at the end of it, when the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that, he said, fuck you, I can, and he did the Higher Education Act. That's exactly what we wanted him to do. Then he does it, and people go, oh, that's not good enough. And it's like, that's ridiculous.
There, Kyle, what we wanted him to do was first and foremost, just cancel the student
No.
debt.
I expected him to do nothing on student debt. This is the point I'm trying to get across to you, is that I expected nothing from Biden, and he did way more than I expected. Let's be honest about that.
It's not about your expectations. We have different expectations.
Of course I'm going to talk about it through my expectations. I'm me.
But I want to pivot this conversation a little bit, because what we really have is a tactical disagreement. We could quibble about student loan debt. We could quibble about all kinds of aspects of the Biden administration. All of us would like him to do more. There's no doubt about that. But hold on a second. Our political aims are ultimately very similar. But I do think the student loan debt example is instructive, because it shows what has been effective in terms of securing real gains versus what has been ineffective. Jill Stein running in 2016, I don't think she was a spoiler, but the Democratic Party thinks she was a spoiler. They put that out to the public. So in the theory of change, where a third party would force all of this revolutionary change on the Democratic Party, that should have worked. But instead, it served to allow the Democratic Party to basically demonize and dismiss third party efforts, and then they prop up Joe Biden. So that definitely didn't work. However, the fact that Joe Biden had to be on a primary debate stage versus Bernie and Marianne and a whole lot of Elizabeth Warren, a whole lot of other people who were pushing him on student loan debt cancellation, forced him into a position of doing something when he 100% would have done nothing otherwise. And we can see that now because, the fact that they've basically blocked any sort of real democratic process within the Democratic primary has made it possible for him to literally promise nothing
time,
for this
baby.
next term
Let's go.
thus far. So you can see how the third party effort was not successful in bringing about whatever revolutionary change people want to see. And the process that Bernie engaged in and that Marianne Williamson is engaging in now was far more effective in actually delivering results. And that's what I'm focused on.
So, first of all, I think, are both fundamentally, dramatically overestimating and overstating and giving way too much credit in the second that you can make your labor point, the student debt point, absolutely not. Joe Biden promised and coerced people to the polls by saying he was going to cancel at least $10,000 of everybody's student loan debt, and moreover, cancel all student loan debt for graduates of HBCUs. And he went down to Georgia, a state that he not only needed to win for the presidency, but needed to win for the Senate.
Yeah, frankly, I think Absolution Zero, I think more time away from Sagar, it does her good. Rude Chicken, it is, my hair is kind of red. Just very dark red. Gotta get it recolored. But I think that there has been a change of mind in Kyle, and I think that in turn has had an effect on Krystal. So I think more time with Kyle, less time with Sagar has freed up brain capacity. She's no longer being constantly stymied by, a fascist little weasel.
And where there are 3 of the major HBCUs in the United States of America.
Or at least the stymieing is less now, anyway.
Made that promise, and people knocked doors and turned people out to the polls on the basis of that promise, which he immediately stopped talking about the second he got elected and reneged upon. He also knew the authority that he had to cancel all student debt. And I know because all of these student debt advocates have been talking about how they were directly liaising with his office and communicating these points, and they chose to ignore them and do a plan that he knew could be obstructed. You can say it's not a conspiracy theory, that's conspiratorial thinking, but it's either a conspiracy or he's an idiot. Those are the options. And I'm not especially comfortable in validating either of those things. Now, you were saying that you were looking through the prism of your own perspective.
No, I was saying I expected nothing from him, like we all expected nothing from him.
Absolutely not. The people that he promised.
I expected nothing from him.
Wait a minute.
I expected nothing of Joe Biden. He was the guy who brought us NAFTA. He's the guy who brought us the Iraq War. He's the guy who wrote the Patriot Act, who wrote the crime bill. I expected nothing of him.
When a presidential candidate makes a promise to people and lies to them in order to get them to go to the polls, I believe it's my job as a member of independent media to make it clear so that people don't fall for those kinds of mistakes going forward. People, if Biden wants to run as I'm a milquetoast incrementalist who's just better than Trump, he can feel free to do that all day and night.
That's what he did. That's what he did. And you know what? His milquetoast incrementalist stuff still had him proposing things that were more progressive than any mainstream Democratic candidate for president with an actual shot of winning has been saying ever in American history. So, yeah, like, Biden fucking sucks. But so has every other president of the United States.
And then he would have lived up to the expectations that he set for himself in the context of a primary campaign.
He did run as a milquetoast.
He promised to cancel all student debt for every graduate of an HBCU and $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt for people who earn less than $125,000 a year. Now, that might not matter to you. And I defend you guys against claims that, you don't care about this stuff because, you're out of touch and it doesn't affect you in material. I think that some of those claims get really silly and overly personalized. But Biden made a choice to tell 44 million Americans who have student debt that he was not only going to not fulfill his promise to them, but that in the middle of the debt ceiling argument of a couple of months ago, the one thing that he was going to bargain away to get the debt ceiling passed was ending the student loan moratorium. So now it's not me. I'm not the one in control of whoever votes. He has to make the case.
Thanks for joining us, Rude Chicken. Also, hello, Flower Guy.
He's starting their student debt up. Right, months before an
election. Is the plan stronger or weaker than what you expected? Because it's way stronger than what I expected.
Way weaker than what I expected.
I expected nothing from him on student debt.
Why would you expect a lot from the guy who opposed, like, desegregated busing? Like, why would you expect a lot from that guy?
The real question, though, is we all want all of the debt to be canceled.
Duh. Yeah, of course.
What is the most likely path to get us there?
It's not Joe Biden, obviously.
Hold on. But I don't see how Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and unintentionally helping to reelect Trump, that doesn't get us there at all.
Let's get into that. So for
whereas
two things.
if you have a primary contender actually able face-to-face to pressure him,
Well, those
we
things
have
aren't
seen the
mutually
way
exclusive,
that
Krystal.
can potentially work.
Those things aren't
but
mutually exclusive. So
tell
why
me
is that an argument against Cornel West?
It doesn't have to be exclusive, but do you think that the project of defeating Trump is worthwhile at all? Because I would turn back on you. You asked the question, like, where's the bottom of the lesser evil question? Like, where does that end? I would turn it back on you and say, where does it become not just a lesser evil, but like, actually, this person is significantly better. And I would say that Biden, for my disappointments with him, for all of the things that I talk about plenty, including disappointments on student loan debt, including on the pandemic relief that I talked about, including on the railway, all these
Wolverine
things.
Chicken,
Right,
I'm glad to see you back from the serfs.
At what point, though, do you acknowledge that this
We
person
gotta get
is
Lance
a
on here
lot
sometime soon.
better than Donald Trump? And so when you're in this binary choice,
Thanks for the
where
follow.
let's not pretend like Cornel West is going to be president of the United States, it is worth making the choice in that situation to reelect Joe Biden and get the NLRB and get the antitrust stuff and get what is at hand to be gotten in this moment and live to fight another day.
So for one, Krystal, somebody might say, and people did make this exact argument against Bernie Sanders. Fine, he's on the stage, but I'm not going to vote for him. I'm not going to weaken the person who's ultimately, obviously going to be the president of the United States.
Bernie Sanders' polling was also a lot different than Marianne Williamson's or Cornel West's. Also, Bernie was running within the Democratic Party, which changes the calculations immensely.
Why not vote for Biden in the primaries? You're wrinkling your brow because it's a ridiculous argument. I completely agree. I don't see the argument for Marianne and against Cornel West. They have nothing to do with each other. You can vote for Marianne in a primary. You can be happy that she's on the debate stage, which obviously they aren't allowing, which is material to this argument, I've got to say. Some people you're saying, what is the Green Party going to do? The Democratic Party has demonstrated that it won't host a free and fair and open primary.
Wait, I get that. But how does Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and helping unintentionally to reelect Trump, how does that move us towards our goals?
So two things. One, you said this in the now viral clip, that just framing Cornel West as the spoiler, looking at those polls. In those polls that you referenced, Biden is losing in both of them, with or without Cornel West in the race. Now,
yeah, so it's not really going to help if Cornel West steals 5% of the vote. I'm sure the fascist dictator will look very kindly on the third party, or like, just as is more likely, kill all of his opposition.
Cornel West makes it worse. I just want to clarify one thing.
Also, am I wrong? But is Cornel running third party? Bernie was primarying. No, Flower Guy, you're 100% correct. Cornel West is actually running third party. He announced under the People's Party. He's now under the Green Party. So like her argument is just not good at all. The comparison doesn't work.
I'm not blaming people or saying like it's their fault for Trump getting reelected or whatever. But I am saying we would like it if the way the Democratic Party responded to Cornel West would be to cancel all the student loan. But we know that's not reality. We know that what ought to happen and the reality of what will happen are two very different things.
Let's get to the second point.
Yeah.
You framed the 2016 votes for Jill Stein and the reaction of the Democratic Party subsequently as evidence that a concerted movement effort to withhold one's votes has been proven ineffective. It is obviously the case, Krystal, that there was not a concerted effort in 2016 or any kind of structural movement to withhold one's vote for Hillary Clinton in favor of Jill Stein. It was just a bunch of us angry Bernie bros, a very small number, by the way, because we all know sitting here that more Bernie Sanders voters in 2016 bent the knee and voted for Hillary Clinton than Hillary Clinton voters in 2008 bent the knee and voted for Barack Obama. We all know these statistics. We've been saying them back at neoliberals for the last...
Yeah, but the point is the math is still there. Like, even if Hillary Clinton was able, or Bernie Sanders was able to convince his voters, and like that was an anomaly, like how many people he was able to convince of his own party to, or his own movement to vote for Hillary. It just seems like the stripping of support still happened, which is the issue that is being brought up here.
5, 6, whatever years. That being said, there was no argument to control the media narrative and present an opportunity for actual leverage and change. So there wasn't like a group, there was no spokesperson, there was no politician.
Oh wait, yeah, let's check in. Let's check in on how the People's Party is doing today. Yeah, this is the party that the Cornel West initially announced that he was running with.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters, directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop, directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York, while in Washington a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon in the Budget Analyst Office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001.
Holy
Luckily,
shit,
the
dude.
news-
Holy shit. See, this is why I always say conspiracism is a gateway to the right, okay? It doesn't matter if we're talking about left-wing conspiracism, because the left-wing conspiracism ultimately hooks back around to just complete far-right insanity.
News anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-TECH, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated.
Oh my god, dude. No plane hit this building because it was a simulation, man. Like, what the fuck?
At the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission did brilliantly, answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her. And her, and her, and him. Osama bin Laden lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he...
Basically, this video is just trying to point out how... like, oh yeah, things happen. Isn't that suspicious? Isn't it really suspicious how things just happen sometimes? Oh, he got away somehow. Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, this is spirit science. Again, this is why like woo-woo mysticism like tends to wrap around into far-right movements. You know?
He was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. This is the story of 9/11, brought to you by the media which told you the hard truths about
his head could be seen to move violently forward.
And
they took the babies out of incubators.
And
mobile production facilities.
And
the rescue of Jessica Lynch.
If you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit paranoid tinfoil dog-abusing baby hater and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone.
You are cool.
Ever.
Have some dollars laughing face.
This has been a public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, MSM, White House, NIST, and the 9/11 Commission. Because ignorance is strength.
Just as an FYI, 3,000, like over 3,000 people died in that terrorist attack. And then it kicked off a war where 1.4 million people died. Man. Holy shit, dude. I can't. Absolution Zero, thank you for the 3 gifted, I was reading it, 3 gifted tier 1 subs. The tier 3 sub, Absolution Zero, thank you very goddamn much. I appreciate that immensely. Okay, we're gonna finish this.
And there was no left media that was saying, here, I have a organized movement, an organized group of people who are willing to actually change their mind and vote for the Democratic nominee in exchange for various concessions. That didn't exist. And I'm, by the way, not advocating for it. I know
I'm back to being mad again. It only took 5 seconds.
That some of my friends like Nathan Robinson have said that Cornel West should do exactly.
Of course, Nathan Robinson is her friend. Nathan Union Buster Robinson.
Exactly that, say that he'd be willing to drop out in exchange for various concessions. I think that's better than nothing. I think that's more than, frankly, I love Marianne and I hope she's successful, but that's more than Marianne is likely to get out of this. However, that is not even my plan, my perspective.
Yeah.
What I am saying, though, is that knowing that the Democratic Party is fundamentally not willing to be fair. They're willing to rig the election. They're willing to change the order of the states. They are willing to completely block Marianne out of the media.
Who is actually the horniest chatter?
Oh, Kyrie, thank you for gifting Gay Fesh a sub. And it's me. I'm the horniest chatter. When I sometimes type in chat, it's me. All of you think you're horny. You've only dabbled in horny. You've only dipped your toes in the horny. I'm the horniest motherfucker here.
Feels rich to say that running within the Democratic Party is
Oh yeah, did I hear about Drew Barrymore scabbing her writers? Yeah, I don't even get it. Like, Drew Barrymore's entire thing is being, like, perceived as nice. And then, like, she's fucking over her workers. And also, I guess maybe she has, like, $1 billion company or something. I don't know.
Manifestly and demonstrably more effective in actually changing the outcomes
because of the structural barriers, Bree.
Than Cornel West, who at very least, you keep being very dismissive, Kyle, about this 5% matching fund.
First of all, I've said like 2 words in the past 10 minutes, okay? So I'm not being dismissive about anything. I haven't gotten a fucking word in.
Okay.
Raka-san, thank you very much for subscribing. I appreciate it.
It's the structural barriers against running as a third party, as rigged as it is by the DNC against outsider Democrats, which it definitely is. It's even more rigged against third parties, which is why they always get like 3% of the vote.
Which is literally
why Bernie got 43% of the vote.
Which is literally why people feel it is a structural advantage to get someone like Cornel West to 5% of the vote so they can get federal matching funds. To me, as a voter,
40% as a Democrat.
For me, as a voter in New York, I'm not interested in shoring up the Democratic Party.
No, that's him getting his ideas out. It's shoring up Cornel West. That's the whole point.
I am not a Democrat.
I understand that. That's very clear. But I'm saying that would shore up Cornel West.
And the people who also don't want to vote for Joe Biden under any circumstances are not Democrats. And fundamentally, you can make your argument. I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument to make to Democrats. I think that Democrats might think that Joe Biden is a manifestly better Democrat than other Democrats.
But it's not about whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's about what are your political goals. And I think that we
100%.
share a lot of the same political
no,
goals.
It's okay,
But hold on,
Roxandra.
but hold on. So I still don't understand. Just lay out for me.
Yeah.
What in the ideal scenario happens, and how does that constitute any sort of revolutionary change or help to further the goals that we largely share?
Yeah. I think for one, getting federal matching funds for third-party candidates, since I believe third parties are going to be a much better vehicle to actual meaningful change in this country than the Democratic Party, is infinitely more significant a goal.
But
than,
third parties haven't gotten a single electoral vote in
and
50
it's like round
years,
and round
Bree.
and round and round.
No,
in
but
a
it's true
circle.
because, I mean, look at Ross Perot had all the money in the world. It didn't matter.
He didn't get one electoral
He
vote.
didn't get one electoral
Do you agree
vote.
that
That's
ranked
the
choice
reality
voting
of the
needs to come
American
first? That's the
political
important question. Do you agree that
I
if
think
we get ranked choice voting, then yes, overnight third parties become more viable.
that Cornel
but until we
West-
get them, they're not viable.
I think that Cornel West running in a general election where he has been doing this. He's been talking about ranked choice voting in interviews, but continuing to talk about how the onus is on the Democratic Party to prevent the spoiler effect. He is in a position now running in a general election every time he goes on TV to say, if you're upset at me at being a spoiler, you need to look at the Democratic Party, who across the country for the last decades has been purposefully undermining any ballot measures that effectively put into effect ranked choice voting in Maine, in North Carolina, the way they attacked Matthew Ho. I am not the enemy, they are. And that's the burden.
Yeah, again, absolution zero. This is the core of my issue with Briahna Joy Gray, which is that she views this as an aesthetic choice. She views like fighting for democracy as aesthetic.
Shifting, the narrative burden shifting, I think the left should be engaged in right now. To the extent that you think that Cornel West can ruin Biden's chances, isn't it Biden's responsibility to find those votes, not among disaffected
Sorry,
third partiers
babes, the
who
debate stays on
who don't
during
owe him
sex.
anything anyway, but the tens of thousands of millions of disaffected Democrats who aren't going to vote for him? We've all talked about this together. In Wisconsin, in 2016, there were 88,000 registered Black voters who voted in 2012 who declined to vote in 2016. That's like 2 or 3 times the margin by which Hillary Clinton lost in that state alone. And yet we're sitting here talking about whether or not Cornel West is going to pull some third-party voters away from the Democratic Party?
It's the difference between what I would love to happen and the reality that we have experienced now. I mean, we tried it before in 2016. It did not help.
What did we try in 2016?
The third-party effort. Jill Stein was not a spoiler. It is not those voters' fault who voted for, like you guys that voted for Jill Stein.
But she got blamed anyway.
But she got blamed.
And then the left was further marginalized as a result of it.
So I don't see the connection. If I did, I would love to vote for Cornel West. It would feel way better to vote for Cornel West. I share his politics almost 100%. But I don't see the connection between voting for Cornel West and achieving any of the aims. And I see a much more direct connection between protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board and allowing this little budding, exciting, amazing, potentially transformational labor movement to actually grow. Whereas if Trump gets reelected, which is, listen, it's the fact, based on how the Democratic Party is going to respond to Cornel West's election bid, it is more likely that Donald Trump gets elected with Cornel West in the race. And that, to me, is a massive loss because we know what his record is. We know what his National Labor Relations Board was. We know who his labor secretaries were and how they were engaged in all this union busting. And so I see a much more direct connection between that moving the ball in our direction than, Cornel West getting 5% and either his candidacy not really mattering at all or being used once again to, smear the left and marginalize the left and say these are just the people that are interested in getting Trump elected.
So to that second point, I'm just going to be honest. Not only do I not care about arguments that the left is going to be smeared, I think it's silly because no matter what we do, the left is going to get smeared. Bernie won Nevada, and it was, oh my God, we're going to decapitate people in Central Park. It is, I think, deeply unrealistic to expect that there's ever going to be a left movement that genuinely challenges power in this country that's not going to be smeared. And if you are choosing your political strategy on the basis of what's going to get you a pat on the head from MSNBC, and I know I don't mean to mischaracterize you, but that is
But I'm
naive.
listen.
Again, these are arguments made by someone who has no skin in the game. You know, frankly.
That's fine, and I agree with you. Left is going to be smeared, but the question is, what is actually going to move the ball forward?
I'm confused by why you
and
keep
I just
asking
don't
that.
Because I don't see
Because policy is all that matters at the end of the day.
I don't see how Cornell West getting 5% and helping to reelect Trump ends up with things going in a better direction.
Like that, Krystal. He doesn't. He gets 5%, and then the Green Party, a third party effort, it gets stronger and more well funded and more able to compete in future elections.
Until we have ranked choice voting, there is no even 1% viability for them. Can you admit that? Can you acknowledge that it's until we get ranked choice voting, no third party has any chance in hell. You agree with that, right?
Who do you think has been doing most of the ranked choice? Who do you think?
I'm not going to answer it. It's a simple question.
I'm going to answer it in my own time, in my own words, Kyle, respectfully.
It's a simple one. The ranked choice voting thing, if we get ranked choice voting.
I go around, I do a lot of podcasts, and I don't know what's going on right now. It might be the phase of the moon. We had the double moon last month. But I'm getting a little frustrated with feeling shouted down and disrespected in every single space that I go into. I gotta say, I promise I'm gonna answer your.
Have better opinions. Just throwing it out there. Just maybe reflect on why that could be, and have better opinions.
Your question, Kyle. Sit tight. I got it coming for you.
I'll sit tight.
Who do you think has been doing the bulk and the best funded ranked choice voting advocacy in terms of getting on ballots and getting it passed in the United States of America?
Third party voters.
The Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
Because unlike the Green Party, I'm no fan of the Libertarian Party, but for obvious reasons, they were enormously better funded than the Green Party. And they, as a consequence, have been able to make much greater gains and actually getting ranked choice voting passed around the country. What I'm saying is that there's a tangible material benefit to getting more money for a Green Party, whatever third party happens to be, but right now all we have is the Green Party for obvious reasons. Getting them more money to do the work across the country to advance third parties, ranked choice voting, rather, is exactly the goal that you're articulating. So yes, I do see a direct connection between your goal, your stated goal of getting ranked choice voting and voting for the Green Party. You know who's not going to fight for ranked choice voting? The Democratic Party.
Here's my point.
Spoken like somebody who hasn't looked into that issue at all.
Here's my point. There's not even...
Because if you look at at state level initiatives, people are pushing for ranked choice voting in the Democratic Party.
Even a
Midnight
1%
Null Night,
chance
thank you very much
or
for
a
subscribing over on
0.1%
Twitch.
Chance of Cornell West winning unless or until we get ranked choice voting. So I have to be honest. I feel
she's not on the Jimmy Dore level yet, but she's like pretty adjacent to the Jimmy Dore level, frankly.
like it's self-disenfranchisement to really like put all your effort into third parties before we get ranked choice, putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. That's my point. And on the issue of Democrats versus Republicans, we know either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And clearly we have a disagreement in terms of how good of a job Joe Biden is doing. Because like I said, I expected nothing of him, Briahna. I expected, this is the guy who brought us the Iraq War and the Patriot Act and NAFTA, and he's like the poster child of the conservative Democrat and the neoliberal. But then he gets in office and he does all these things which shock me. He massively reduced the drone war by over 90%. He, like I said, pulled out of Afghanistan. The Supreme Court overturned the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. And the Democrats slipped into the IRA a provision that redefines carbon as a pollutant, which then allows the EPA to start protecting the environment again. If we didn't get that, and yes, that was brought to us by Democrats, we would be beyond fucked on the issue of climate change. We still are, but we'd be even more fucked if the EPA couldn't do basic EPA stuff. We have project labor agreements for hundreds of thousands of construction workers. That came to us.
He's not wrong. He's actually quite correct.
From Biden, $15 minimum wage for federal contractors and employees. That's from Biden. Gun reform with red flag laws and closing the boyfriend loophole. Those are definitely good things. Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court. A George Floyd executive order to create a registry of abusive cops. We have the PACT Act, which is healthcare for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits, which every single Republican voted against. He added 800,000 manufacturing jobs. I didn't expect any of these things. So when I talk about Biden the way I do, is because none of these things were on the menu and we got them. So now when I look at the fact it's either going to be Trump or Biden, a standard generic Republican or standard generic Democrat, the way I feel now versus the way I felt in the past is like, oh, this is definitely way better. If you asked me in 2019 or 2020, I'd be like, I don't know, man, flip a coin. 52%, maybe a Democrat's a little bit better than a Republican. Now I'm looking at it like, it's not even close. One blows the other out of the water, and all I care about is the policy. And when we have all these policies, I mean, we have a 15% corporate minimum tax rate now. That is not something we had previously. You'd have corporations paying nothing in taxes, or they'd even get a negative tax rate, which is a subsidy effectively from the taxpayers. These things are not nothing. We have a 1% tax on stock buybacks. They're cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. Like, all these things are very good. They're objectively good. So do you agree that Biden is better than what we expected on the left?
Maybe you've already set your expectations on the ground.
Hey,
and it seems like
Doodleberg,
he's
how you
surpassed your
doing, lovely?
expectations. He has not.
Also,
surpassed
hello,
mine.
Sir
I don't
Flexington
know
III.
what you want me to say.
But he's
about
not better
that.
than what you thought?
Oh, please. I want to see the rest of this interview. Why?
That's
No,
honest
he's not
question.
better than what I thought he would.
Really?
Let me,
No.
So you
Let me
expected to be better than I did, for sure.
Well, I expected him to. Well, I didn't really expect him to fulfill his campaign promises, but I'm not going to pat him on the back when he so flagrantly lied about them. No.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build.
Incredible. Incredible.
Getting them more money to do the work across the country to advance third parties, ranked choice voting rather, is exactly the goal that you're articulating. So yes, I do see a direct connection between your goal, your stated goal of getting ranked choice voting, and voting for the Green Party. You know who's not going to fight for ranked choice voting? The Democratic Party.
Here's my point. Here's my point.
Here we go.
There's not even a 1%
night,
chance
Method
or a
Yahoo.
0.1% chance of Cornel West winning unless or until we get ranked choice voting. So I have to be honest, I feel like it's self-disenfranchisement to really like put all your effort into third parties before we get ranked choice, putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. That's my point. And on the issue of Democrats versus Republicans, we know either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And clearly we have a disagreement in terms
Can you
of
show us? Ooh,
how
bread into
good of a
toast,
job
getting
Joe Biden is
spicy.
doing. Because like I said, I expected nothing of him, Briahna. I expected...
I'm sorry,
This is the guy who
Doodleberg.
brought us the Iraq War and the Patriot Act and NAFTA, and he's like the poster child of the conservative Democrat and the neoliberal. But then he gets in office and he
I'm
does
glad
all these
streaming's
things
been
which
going well
shock
for
me.
you.
He massively reduced the drone war by over 90%. He, like I said, pulled out of Afghanistan. The Supreme Court overturned the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, and the Democrats slipped into the IRA a provision that redefines carbon as a pollutant, which then allows the EPA to start protecting the environment again. If we didn't get that, and yes, that was brought to us by Democrats, we would be beyond fucked on the issue of climate change. We still are, but we'd be even more fucked if the EPA couldn't do basic EPA stuff. We have project labor agreements for hundreds of thousands of construction workers. That came to us from Biden. $15 minimum wage for federal contractors and employees. That's from Biden. Gun reform with red flag laws and closing the
I'm
boyfriend
glad it's been
loophole. Those are
going well for
definitely
you,
good things.
Doodle.
Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court. A
You're
George
really
Floyd
talented.
executive
You
order to create
deserve
a
more of an
registry of
audience.
abusive cops. We have the PACT Act, which is healthcare for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits, which every single Republican voted against. He added 800,000 manufacturing jobs. I didn't expect any of these things. So when I talk about Biden the way I do, is because none of these things were on the menu and we got them. So now when I look at the fact it's either going to be Trump or Biden, a standard generic Republican or standard generic Democrat, the way I feel now versus the way I felt in the past is like, oh, this is definitely way better. If you asked me in 2019 or 2020, I'd be like, I don't know, man, flip a coin. 52%, maybe a Democrat's a little bit better than a Republican. Now I'm looking at it like, it's not even close. One blows the other out of the water, and all I care about is the policy. And when we have all these policies, I mean, we have a 15% corporate minimum tax rate now. That is not something we had previously. You'd have corporations paying nothing in taxes, or they'd even get a negative tax rate, which is a subsidy effectively from the taxpayers. These things are not nothing. We have a 1% tax on stock buybacks. They're cracking down on wealthy tax cheats.
God damn, Kyle, you've already shot. You're at Kyle Ken times 30, okay? Like, holy shit. Literally going Super Saiyan over here. Okay, like, stop. She's already dead.
Like, all these things are very good. They're objectively good. So do you agree that Biden is better than what we expected on the left?
Maybe you've already set your expectations on the ground, and it seems like he's surpassed your expectations. He has not surpassed mine. I don't know what you want me to say.
But he's
about
not better
that.
than what you thought?
No,
That's an honest
he's not
question.
better than what I thought he would.
Really?
No.
So you expected to be better than I did, for sure.
Well, I expected him to. Well, I didn't really expect him to fulfill his campaign promises, but I'm not going to pat him on the back when he so flagrantly lied.
Okay. It's interesting how she well, I'm not expecting him to fulfill his campaign promises. Well, then why are you talking like you do?
About them, no.
But let me ask you a related but different question. I mean, how do you assess the difference between a Trump and a Biden? Acknowledging that, I mean, I think you would acknowledge it's not, Cornel West is not going to be president.
I'm going to be honest with you. If it's about convincing me how Briahna Joy Gray is going to vote, Briahna Joy Gray lives in D.C., is constructively disenfranchised, and Briahna Joy Gray also is sympathetic to accelerationist arguments. So I am not afraid of Trump, and I will never for the...
Okay, but then make the accelerationist argument, right? Like, okay, if that's the argument you want to make, then why should we usher in fascism? How will that be helpful? Make the argument.
The rest of my life.
But she doesn't want to because she knows it would look real fucking bad.
I don't care if I live in Pennsylvania. I don't care if I live in Georgia. Vote out of fear. That's not who I am. That's not who I was raised. That's just me. And I recognize that I am radical. I recognize I'm not telling anybody to be like me, but that's who I am.
So, but just to get back to the question, I mean, do you acknowledge that Biden is better than Trump? I genuinely want to know, like, how do you assess? Do you see they're like roughly the same?
I think it depends on what metric they're using. There are people who will take everything that you just said and say, if Biden escalating in Ukraine the way he has been doing, missiles going off deeper, closer to Russia that are Western in origin, and the doomsday clock ticking down on World War III the way it has been done.
Oh my God, dude.
Cancels out all of the meaningful gains that you just articulated so nicely. If it comes down to World War III versus that litany of achievements that you just articulated, there are people that, with the hindsight of living in the nuclear holocaust, would say, well, I guess that Trump actually was a better president.
Who's more likely to get us World War III, though? I definitely think it's Trump. I definitely think it's Trump more likely to get us World War III.
I don't want to know what people think.
You disagree with that?
I want to know what you think. Do you think that that's accurate? Because to me, I look at the record.
We don't know until...
Expected him to have the back of the railroad strikers. I wanted him to cancel student debt. I'm glad he did the IRA, but there was stuff I wish he did that he can still do and doesn't because it feels he's using it to vote for me. I promise we'll fix this thing, in my opinion. Yeah, no, I 100%. Like, I don't like Joe Biden. I don't think he's radical enough by any measure. But to say, like, oh, well, he's indistinguishable from Trump, or we should, we should throw this away and roll the dice on fascism. I'm not sympathetic to that argument.
Until history happens, what history is going to do. I wouldn't have expected that under Biden we would have gotten in the middle of this war with Ukraine and Russia. That wasn't on my bingo card either.
Yeah, but we know that Trump was actually more hawkish towards Russia than
he built up on NATO's border.
Obama
he put troops on NATO's border.
We know what he did with Iran. We know he said he was going to get on Afghanistan. Biden actually did it. So we can.
Does she mean sending them weapons for defense? Yeah, she's just patently against that as a concept.
We can evaluate these two claims. That we shouldn't believe anything that Donald Trump says about Ukraine.
A toxic. This is literally just a vote blue, no matter who a lesser two evils
conversation. No, it's a let's discuss the facts and how you weigh them conversation.
How about this? Biden can be 10 times better than Trump. Let's concede that for the sake of argument. I'm not voting for him. And millions of other people feel the same way because it has absolutely nothing to do with that. I don't know how else to express this to you guys. Kyle, it's not that there is a
yeah, I look, again, this is why you need to recontextualize it. 10 times better than Trump. Okay, but does that 10 times include being, not a fascist, right? Like, all right. So, are you just going to ally with the fascist or empower the fascist in this situation? No, come on, dude. Like, this isn't even comparable.
Disinterest or a failure to recognize what are meaningful changes. But there is a realization that acknowledging gains when the possibility of what someone could be doing to help the population that elected them when there was a huge
And yeah, we are stuck between two rocks. It's a two-party duopoly. We are inherently, by the nature of the system, stuck between two rocks. And the way to get out of that is ranked choice voting. But that is something that needs to be adopted on the state level. And until that happens, we need to deal with the two-party duopoly we have, and that means working within the democratic system. And within the Democratic Party in particular.
huge gap there. It can be papered up by championing someone's accomplishments. And people are reluctant to give credit precisely because they think it will end the conversation about how much further people should be pushed. So it feels akin to saying, Jeff Bezos was walking down the street and he gave a $5 to a homeless person.
It's not that, oh my God.
Don't you want to pat him on the back? And it's like, well, yeah, on some level, I'm glad the
Briahna.
homeless guy can give his sandwich. But your framing of the student debt issue
Is accurate? Yeah.
is precisely what the problem is.
It's not a problem. Look, I am actually discussing the facts that I learned through reading 1,000 articles on the case. Now, if I bring up those facts and it triggers some idiots into hating me, so be it. They can hate me all they want. The facts still matter.
What are you talking about?
Okay, I didn't expect him to appeal the cases. He appealed the cases. I didn't expect him to do the Higher Education Act after the Supreme Court slapped it down. He did the Higher Education Act. I didn't expect him to do any of it, and he did it. And this is something that, if I said early on, Biden's going to do nothing on student loan debt, everybody on the left would have been like, you're right, he's going to do nothing. Now he does 5, 6 different things on it, and it's like people go, no, doesn't count. I'm not saying what he's doing is perfect. Obviously, the best thing to do is to wipe it all out through executive order, and he has the authority to do that. That'd be the best thing to do. He didn't do that, but can we at least acknowledge the facts of what went down? And I see this rugged insistence. Honestly, it's like Biden derangement syndrome among some people on the left, and it's like Democrat derangement syndrome among some people on the left. The fact that we can't all agree very quickly that, well, obviously Democrats are not 10 times.
Kyle like put on his fighting gloves today. I'm actually really impressed.
Times better than Republicans. They're 100 times better than Republicans. And even if you are somebody who's a purist and you're on the left, you can acknowledge a W in the instances you get it while still pushing for more. I mean, a perfect example is what's happening in Minnesota right now. Minnesota has a 1-seat Democrat majority. We got universal free school meals, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the
By the way, living in Minnesota is pretty good, okay?
working class up to $1,300 if you make under $150,000 a year. 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave. They banned conversion therapy. They did red flag laws for guns. They did universal background checks for guns. They did automatic voter registration, public free college if you make under $80K, a ban on PFAs, which is the forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers. These things are all not little wins. They are huge wins. And I still see this insistence like we're back in 2016 or something where people are like, nope, Democrats and Republicans are either equally bad or actually jujitsu move, Republicans are the lesser evil. And I think it's idiotic. It's doomerist. It's nihilist. It's people who are refusing to acknowledge reality, and they'd rather narrative hump all day talking about Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, but oh yeah, I'm a leftist.
Going back to the student debt.
We watched this clip earlier, I think last week, and it's still so good. The pause, the absolute pause, the complete disregarding of his comments. Great.
Debt point. It is kind of telling to me, Kyle, that you so quickly you injected your own low.
It's kind of telling to me that you're not as good of a leftist as I am. I'm far too far to the left to be voting for the likes of Biden.
Objective, personal, and low expectations into the argument to say, well, because Joe Biden did more than I subjectively believed was possible, I am going to, you're accusing me of minimizing the accomplishments. I think that you might be minimizing his failures and the extent to which that he knowingly, it seems, lied about what he was willing to do, and in fact, dramatically underachieved his campaign promises. And for you, that might be a hop, skip, and a jump. Okay, but he did more than I expect. You're setting your expectations lower than the expectations that he set for the American public in the context of his campaign. And I completely respect and appreciate that that doesn't bother you as much as it bothers me. I don't know if it's because I have experienced six-figure student debt. I don't know your life. I'm not trying to make any presumptions about it. I don't know if it's because I had a certain kind of life experiences, or that
I don't know. I don't know if it's because I just have better leftist credentials than you. Let me list them off so everyone can think about them. How much better I am than you.
other people who kind of share my view have these kind of life experiences. But for millions of us, 44 million in fact, that kind of bait and switch is unforgivable.
By the way, I love how she's like, yeah, for millions of us. Yeah, of us. She makes $20,000 a month on her podcast. Like, I'm sorry, you're not suffering under that student loan debt, okay?
When you recognize, as you have both recognized, that it was in his power to sign an executive order to deliver overwhelmingly for the people whose votes he needs right now. So the argument is not with me. The argument is with the millions of Americans who feel betrayed by Joe Biden and his campaign promises. If we have a contract agreement for you to fix the hole in my roof and I give you $100, and you come into my house and instead you restage my living room and it looks beautiful, that simply wasn't the agreement. And so I am fine. I'm happy to acknowledge the furniture placement is gorgeous. I love the floral arrangements, but that's not what we bargained for. And if your desire is to push the Democratic Party left, you have to. Chris Hedges says this all the time. It's a politics of fear. If you are more afraid of electing Trump than the Democratic Party is, you are never going to be able to exert any leverage on them at all. And I understand that's a risky position. I understand Trump getting reelected is scary. I understand that there are meaningful ways in which he's hurt real people in real ways.
Look, but don't you want to just feel good about yourself when you cast that vote for Cornel West? And, look, Trump might be scary, but, he's not as scary as how disappointed you're going to be with yourself if you vote for Biden. So that's why you should allow a fascist to take power.
I understand all of that. And we just have a difference of opinion about what the priorities are. You said in that viral clip, Krystal, if your priority is reelecting the Democratic Party, then X, Y, and Z. And I think that was good that you said that because you articulated what the priority is for you.
No, that is not the priority for me. The policy is the priority for me, Brie. And I think you know that. And I think it's disingenuous to say otherwise. But let me just say though, is it worth? I mean, I think you care a lot about the labor movement, right?
Sure.
So is it worth letting that baby be smothered in the crib in order to what? I mean, that's the piece that I don't understand. I understand all of your critique of Joe Biden. I think it's reasonable, okay? I actually am not as strong as Kyle in terms of the intentions on the student loan debt,
more of a Biden bro than she
right?
is, for sure. And she gets accused of being a bigger one than me, but that's a side point.
I understand your critiques of Joe Biden very well. Many of them, if not all of them, I basically share. What I don't understand is just simply a tactical question of how focusing on a third-party effort gets us towards the goals that we share. That's the piece that, to me, recent history proves it has the complete opposite effect, whereas we do see actual progress that is possible made through the Democratic primary process. And I know you accept that. You're not a Marianne hater. I'm not putting that on you whatsoever.
Marianne.
But I don't understand how risking the reelection of Trump and allowing a Trump union-busting NLRB to quash what is the most hopeful thing happening in American politics, which is the labor movement. I don't understand how that moves us forward. That just doesn't compute for me.
Well, for one, I'd say, and I don't mean to at all minimize the value of this latest ruling, but I have been heartened by the energy and the gains made by the labor movement prior to that. Over the last few years.
Which were enabled by the Biden NLRB. I mean, there were keys. The workers get listen, they do the work. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. But there were key decisions that were made in the Starbucks organizing drive in particular, in the Amazon labor union drive as well, that enabled those workers to do their thing that wouldn't have happened under Trump.
It feels as though, one, the question has been asked and answered several times. You don't agree with my priority. But
no, I still don't understand it. And I'm may just be dense, but explain again.
I agree with Kyle that ranked choice voting is a priority.
Yeah.
I believe that getting the Green Party more powerful, getting them federal matching funds, enables them to join in the Libertarian Party, which has been the most successful advocate for ranked choice voting in the country, to continue to further those efforts. My vote for Joe Biden does nothing to advance what I think will be the ultimate path toward left victory in the United States, which is getting rid of the corporate duopoly. I don't see voting for Joe Biden as advancing that core effort at all.
So ranked choice voting is kind of like, I'm just trying to understand, is like the end all be all. That's the number one priority. And so you would actually support the Libertarian Party, the American Constitution Party, the Forward Party, whatever, if that it advanced that goal. And that's the priority over everything else. I'm just trying to understand.
Would I personally support an effort by any of those parties to advance ranked choice voting? Yeah, of course.
No, but would you support those parties? Like, because ranked choice voting is so important.
Why would
to
I
you?
when I could vote for the Green Party that actually shares my ideals as well?
Well, I'm just trying to understand where your priorities lie. Is it like you're basically a single issue voter and it's ranked choice voting?
Well, it's not a single issue. It's breaking the corporate duopoly. That's it.
Which would be a single issue, and the only way to do that would be with ranked choice voting. So yeah, you're just saying yes.
This is the fundamental issue. I think that for many people, they are very wary of validating what they see as a two-headed snake. And this comes back to your concern, Kyle, about people not willing to acknowledge these successes. I think that we all understand that there is a way that the two corporate parties play off of each other. Democrats get to keep lowering the bar because the Republicans are worse. They both play these culture war games back and forth with each other, where at the end of the day, we're told, well, you gotta go vote for the Democrats because gay rights and trans rights and black rights and immigrant rights and all of these rights are on the line. And I said this in 2020 as well. It's not that those arguments aren't true. The question is, how do we ever disentangle ourselves from that? Because it's always going to be the case that some worser thing is coming down the pike precisely because we've enabled that to be the case. And many people, and I don't feel quite this way, but many people feel as though
many people are saying
there is an energy suck that happens with even paying attention and voting in these general elections. I think that your points about what's happened on the state level in Minnesota, et cetera, are much stronger. I know that, for example, Sabby Sabs is always making the case that, don't forgo electoral politics, focus more on what's happening on the local level. And I think that is a perfectly reasonable argument to make as well. But I do think that there is a failure to recognize the extent to which there is a validation that takes place of the status quo, that people are trying to negotiate as they reckon with real gains that the Biden administration has effectuated.
Yeah, so let me respond to that. I don't want to validate the status quo as much as I want to acknowledge the positive things that exist and have happened recently, which I think is some evidence that in some ways, limited, but some ways, we are moving in a better direction. So let me share a point of agreement, because we've been arguing the whole time. It'd be nice to have a point of agreement real quick. If we wake up tomorrow and there's ranked choice voting everywhere, I would be the biggest Green Party simp on the planet. I would be insufferable. I would basically spend every day advocating for the Green Party. The reason I don't do that is because we don't have ranked choice voting, and I do feel like the choice is effectively just down to a Democrat or Republican in the general election, whoever they may be. Now, having said that, I don't want to validate the status quo. I just want to let everybody know in some ways we are moving in a good direction. You brought up the state parties there. There are 6 states now that did free school meals for kids. And in some of those states, that's even breakfast and lunch. And people are not going to be surprised to hear this. Those are Democratic states. And you have the Republican Study Committee, which is basically 3/4 of the House GOP. They're pushing to ban any and all states from doing free school meals for kids. They released this in their priority. So when I look at that, I feel like I try to hold the two thoughts in my mind at the same time. I want Cornel West to be president, but I also know that given how structurally deficient and biased the system is right now, that's not going to happen. So given that, yes, I would prefer. Let me ask you this, because I feel like this is a better way to put it. Forget about voting.
Again, this was a fruitless conversation from the start. I mean, not fruitless in the sense of I'm sure they're getting tons of views and everything they wanted from that, but this wasn't ultimately going to bridge the gap or lead to any greater understanding. Briahna Joy Gray has made it clear time and time again that she does not care about the outcomes. She doesn't care about the outcomes of any of these votes. She doesn't care about the outcomes of the elections. All she cares about is her own ideological posturing and purity. Like that's it. Full stop.
Voting's irrelevant, right? Let's just say it's election night 2024. It is all of our worst nightmare, Biden versus Trump. Not voting, but that night when you know it's going to be Biden or Trump winning, are you sitting there like, yeah, of course I would prefer Biden win over Trump?
Honestly,
it's like 50-50?
I don't care.
Okay. All right. That's an answer.
I mean, if you hear someone in politics say this, man, don't, whatever they have left to say, like, it doesn't mean shit. Like, oh, I just don't really care. I just don't care. I'm sorry, I care if America is underneath a fascist who wants to undo democracy. I care about that, actually.
Not
Look,
my party.
That's an answer. It's an answer.
Radical, and people are going to be very upset with me. I don't care. I don't
think
care. That's
there will be people who agree with you. I don't think you.
I know.
Yeah.
They're my audience, and I have come to this position after talking with. I gotta say, I loved Colin. I'm sad that they're shutting it down. But part of the reason I loved it is because I would talk to people who were calling me. I would hear their doors dinging in the background because they were doing food delivery, or they're EMTs, or they're like, and this gets characterized as a privileged position that you don't care who wins, Trump or Biden. My experience is the people who have been taking this position, this is just anecdotal, tend to be people are the lower end of the economic spectrum who do feel like their lives aren't meaningfully different under a Trump versus a Biden, and who.
Yeah. The people who don't have the time necessarily to care all that much about politics, you know, because they don't know. They don't know. I'm sorry. There's a tangible difference for those people if they aren't paying attention to politics, and then all of a sudden, 4 years later, suddenly the EPA isn't able to like keep their drinking water clean. You might be like, oh, but Flint, Michigan, that happened in Flint, Michigan. Yeah, well, what happens if like it's not just Flint, Michigan? What happens if it's, you know, your small town, or you know, their small town, or their small town? You know, like, this is the kind of thing where like it has the downstream effects whether you care about it or not. So you have to care. You don't have the luxury not to. Because if you don't care, you wind up getting poisoned in your water. You wind up with like kids who have like lifetime illnesses. So like Hugo, the bike delivery driver, might not care, but like that's largely because he doesn't have the energy to. You having the energy to care is a privilege, and you need to use it to like do shit. And she's just like, you know, I don't give a shit. I don't care. And I just don't get it.
Who would rather rock the boat and throw a monkey wrench in the machinery if there's even.
Again, allowing a fascist to win in a democracy is not throwing a monkey wrench into the machinery. It's blowing up the machinery. There's no making the machinery better after that. It's the fascist comes and kills you along with your other posturing far left dipshits.
Even a fracture of a sliver of a chance that it has some outcome other than what we've been experiencing for their entire lives.
Fair enough. You gave a direct answer,
yeah,
so I respect it.
The other thing I would say, though, because you said you're basically an accelerationist. Like, you think things need to get better in order for them to get worse.
I feel,
worse in order
given
for
my
them to get
own
better.
class privilege, I am reluctant to personally put those wheels into motion, but I very much respect particularly people who, like I just was talking about, who do feel that way. I think that's a legitimate perspective. I feel like it's not my place to say, let's make the world burn, because I'm going to be okay in either way. But
Do you really think that? Do you really think you're going to be okay either way if like America goes fash? Cuz like if it does, like the fascists don't care if you're like moderately wealthy or not. they'll kill you.
I am
But that
open to that perspective.
colors your view and how you approach these things and why.
Imagine trying to posture being a leftist and your position is like, I don't care if the largest military on earth is controlled by a fascist. Fuck, man. This is baby-brained shit. Just baby-brained absolute shit.
You wouldn't really care whether it's Biden or Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the night of 2016. I wasn't. I don't know. How did you guys feel? I wasn't personally devastated.
So
I felt
that's a
in
great
some
question.
weird
Let me
way
answer.
vindicated.
That's a very.
This is what we had been telling them was going to happen the whole time.
So I agree with you completely about 2016, right? And I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. 2020, I didn't vote for Biden. I didn't vote for anybody. It was sort of like, no, seriously, I think they're roughly equal. I think Biden's around the edges better, but I thought he was going to be as conservative a president as he was a senator. So I was like, okay, whatever. But on the night of 2020, I was actually like, oh, for the love of God, I hope Trump loses. And, you know, it's because I see everything he did. I mean, look, I can run through all the bad things Biden did. That's my standard rant that I've been doing for a long time now. But when you look at Trump, I mean, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation here, but like the 91 felonies that he's charged with for defrauding the United States with fake electors and effectively trying to steal the election. Like, to me, I kind of agree with the people who are like, on that alone, I mean, this is fucking crazy. We've never been here before. We're talking about the peaceful transfer of power is genuinely in question now in a way that it never was before.
Let me say, in terms of my view on Trump, the reason why I'm not even a little bit sympathetic towards the accelerationist view is, first of all, I just think, like, you know, things get worse. Sometimes they just get worse. And I think there's a real possibility that, you know, we go in rather than a leftist utopia, we go in the direction of like a fascist police state. I think that's a real possibility on the table. And if things get worse, I think that's probably more likely than the outcome we would like to see. But specifically on Trump, in some ways, the worst part of the Trump era has been not that it has created a divisive politics, because I believe in a divisive politics. It's just about where the divides should be.
Damn. Okay, Krystal. Good. You're just ditch Saga. Okay, you're doing great here. You're doing great, sweetie. Do this. What you're doing here is great. How come you can't push back on Saga like this?
And he has made politics all about just how do you feel about the person of Donald Trump. And I think that
the poor, that's been something I've been trying to like kind of sprinkle throughout this, which is that like she's just fundamentally completely isolated from like the consequences. So she just doesn't give a shit. Like that's what it is.
Has been a significant barrier in terms of making any of the arguments that we want to make for a different world and better policies, et cetera. Because, yeah, you could say, oh, they'll just say Ron DeSantis or whoever is worse than Trump. But you got to acknowledge there is something a little special about the dude who's going to like do a January 6th and like, you know, have an insurrection, et cetera. He's a particularly potent villain that is weaponized very effectively. And so it creates a divisive politics that is divided along all the wrong lines. So that's why I'm not sympathetic to the view that like, oh, maybe if we elect Trump, somehow that'll make things better in an a process that's 3 years down the road or 3 decades down the road that no one can really explain. I'm not sympathetic to that because I've seen the way that Trump has made our politics worse in real time in a way that has not been beneficial.
Well, for one, I would say to the extent that we are inching closer to fascism as opposed to the socialist utopia, we got exactly here doing vote blue no matter who. So I don't think that any kind of concerted Green Party.
I'll never forget the day after the election 2016. I was friends with the family of my supervisor at the time, and his mom is a therapist who works mostly with LGBT teenagers. The day after the election, she stopped by the office, saw me, ran over, gave me a hug, and just started crying because the kids she'd been talking to all day had been so fucking scared, and she just had no idea what to tell any of them. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like, it comes down to that at the end of the day, you know? Like, that's where we're at. Fucking sucks.
campaign or effort. Third
But
party.
that's not really
If we voted
true,
blue, no
though.
matter who, Al Gore would have been president. We would have never had Bush, and Hillary would have beaten Trump. So vote blue, no matter who, would have been a whole bunch of
wait a minute.
standard milquetoast Democrats.
Now you're making the argument that it's third party spoilers' fault that Al Gore wasn't elected in 2000.
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying you accused, hey, no, the vote blue no matter who argument. I'm saying if people had, quote unquote, voted blue no matter who, Democrats would have won every election. That's the point I'm making.
Well,
the vote blue no matter who means everybody votes
so
Democrat.
For one, more registered Democrats in Florida voted for George Bush.
I know, I agree with
than
this.
they did Al Gore. Al Gore failed to win his own state.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you on that.
I'm struggling with the argument here. What does George Bush? Then the Supreme
No, you just
Court
said
of it
we
all.
got where we
So
are
what
now
is-
because of vote blue no matter who. And the point I was making is, in a real, quote unquote, vote blue no matter who, there would have been no Republicans elected if everybody votes Democrat. That's the point I'm making.
Vote blue no matter who doesn't mean everyone votes Democrat. Vote blue no matter who means the Democratic Party uses coercion and guilt to get people to vote for it instead of delivering on what polls demonstrate overwhelming majorities of Americans want, which is left policies. That's what the pernicious nature of vote blue no matter who is, that it absolves the Democratic Party of having to look at polls that say 2/3 of Americans don't want Joe Biden to run because he's too old, that 88% of Democratic voters want Medicare for all, that 60% of Floridians, a state that went for Trump, wanted a $15 minimum wage. But Joe Biden, whose praises we've been singing a lot today, purposefully stripped on order of the parliamentarian from must-pass COVID legislation so that one...
Again, like, the vote blue no matter who stuff is in a direct response to fascist and authoritarian individuals coming within striking distance of the White House. Like, for fuck's sake.
Core promise that he made to Bernie as Bernie dropped out after like 3 days of not being endorsed after 3 days after dropping out.
I was at a Cars and Coffee and some dude randomly went off about how the libs want to outlaw cars. Yeah. Oh, it's my #1 priority, baby.
Was immediately thrown under the bus.
But let me just to interject real quick, because I don't want you to get the misimpression that I'm not aware of the negative things around Joe Biden. He also said he was going to get back in the Iran agreement, did not get back in the Iran agreement. We're still terribly cucked to Saudi Arabia as a country as they do a genocide, where he's still sanctioning Afghanistan. He's super conservative on the border, almost to the point of being as extreme as Trump. He did the Willow Project. He didn't give us a public option. He didn't give us $15 minimum wage. He didn't get the original Build Back Better through. He screwed the rail workers union, which is something you very potently covered. So I'm not here to pretend like Joe Biden only did good things. I'm trying to do, to the best of my ability, explain what I think are the facts on both sides of the equation. Here are the good things he did, here are the bad things he did, and then people could just make up their own mind as to how they want to proceed in a showdown between Trump or Biden, who they would prefer.
Do you think that Biden is better than Obama?
I'm open to that argument. But again, my fundamental, what purpose does that serve for me?
I think
What purpose does it serve to decide who's better at leading one of the most powerful countries on earth? What purpose does that serve to be able to discern that? Yeah, no, like this is just again, if you had any respect for this person, I feel like it should be long gone by now.
Everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's like, is the person going to do good things that move us in a better direction? Especially, I brought up labor unions a million times, but for me, that's really central, or are they not? And I guess my question for you is, because you were sort of like, all right, let's acknowledge, sure, let's say Biden's 10 times better than Trump. Like, how much better would he have to be before you're like, okay, it's not just lesser evil, it's not just vote blue no matter who, it's actually worth voting for this person?
He would have had to have done everything that he could have done.
Even Bernie wouldn't have done everything he could have done, in my opinion.
Even in comparison,
what kind of statement is that?
I just think.
Wait a minute. I'm not saying he could have.
I'm not taking a shot at you. I'm just saying I don't think politics. Even somebody like Bernie, who's principled, I don't think he even delivers on everything.
He has to fulfill miracles. I'm not saying he has to accomplish everything that he says he wants to do. I'm saying he has to have done
everything he could
have done.
You can do a lot as president. You can do a lot.
So this is the issue with Biden. Not that he didn't wave a wand and create Medicare for all, because we can all acknowledge that even if it were Bernie Sanders, that would have been an uphill battle. But what I choose to focus on my show, and what I really appreciate about reporting by people like David Sirota and The Lever, is that he exposes the gap between what these people have done and what was literally possible, either because of the nature of executive orders, whether it's walking us through the parliamentarian brouhaha and the $15 minimum wage, because so much of neoliberal democratic politics is obscuring that they really could have done things to make lives better for all of us behind the veneer of insidery Hill jargon, or the idea that the Republicans are the big baddies that couldn't allow us anything to pass. And I believe that my job is to cut through those narratives, to expose to the public that the Democratic Party is making choices. They're not
he could have done Medicare
in the football.
I'll go even further than you. I agree. He could have done Medicare for all with the stroke of a pen. And it was David Dayen over at the American Prospect who laid this out, who said basically, look, under a national emergency, you have the authority under Obamacare to basically do single-payer health care, and they did it, I think, in Libby, Montana, because there was some issue there with health. So he had the ability to do it. So I agree with you. He could have done that. He didn't do that. The only point I was trying to make is that even with somebody like Bernie, I think there would be a little bit of a gap between what he says when he's on the podium and if he were to actually be president. I think a guy like Bernie would deliver on way more of the stuff that he says, because I think he's more honest among government officials. But certainly Biden, there's definitely going to be a gap there between what he says and what he would do. But to be fair, like I said before, I do think Biden kind of ran as he wasn't as conservative as like Mike Bloomberg in the 2020 race, but he was pretty conservative. He was running as a pretty conservative Democrat, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was, but he still said, we're going to get a $15 minimum wage. We're going to cancel.
I'm not arguing with you. I don't know why you're I'm not arguing with you, Brie.
Kyle, if you say that he ran as a conservative, what it sounds like you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a furtherance of you saying the bar was on the ground. He fulfilled my expectations.
To me, it was, yeah.
But what I'm telling
he surpassed my expectations.
But he fulfilled, surpassed, whatever. What I'm saying to you is that you have constructed a bar that's lower than Biden constructed for himself.
No, but I don't agree with that. I was going based off of his commentary at the time.
He literally said and ran on
nothing will fundamentally change.
Nothing will fundamentally change. That's true. Come on. I understand what you're saying. There are some examples to the opposite. I agree with you.
Did he not run on a $15 minimum wage? Yes or no?
He definitely did.
Did he run on canceling all student debt? Yes or no?
We're not making
that
the
I'm not sure about.
She knows she has to flip this around on them and act mad because, frankly, they haven't been buying her dog shit deflections. And this is just a louder dog shit deflection. She's mad because fundamentally, it's a pretty easy calculation to make that Joe Biden would be a preferable leader of America by every sane metric than Donald Trump. And she's like, but he lied on 3 things, 4 things, 5 things. Okay, but again, you're advocating for the worst outcome. You're advocating for someone who's not just going to lie on 5 or 10 things, but 10,000 things. Who literally tried to overthrow democracy. The very mechanism by which you would have another go at improving the system in 4 years. So, again, it just keeps coming back to fundamentally she can't overcome the issue of how our democracy works. She can't do it.
Literally did.
I thought it was 10,000.
But hold on, we're not even
$10,000
arguing
for all people under 100.
Yeah,
we're
not even arguing with you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to argue with you right now.
Couldn't have done more, or
we were
that
arguing
he
earlier, not now.
fulfilled every promise or whatever.
Okay,
but what I want to get from you though is in terms of how you see your role as independent media.
Yeah.
And you said you see it as exposing the gap between the Democratic Party neoliberal rhetoric and what they actually deliver.
What they could deliver.
What they could deliver. And I do plenty of that as well. And, we feature the Lever reporting a lot on Breaking Points, et cetera. But when does it become not just you're exposing the gap, but you're actually presenting a dishonest impression of the Biden administration if the positive things that do happen don't get any acknowledgement or coverage?
For one, I think that there is a multi-billion-dollar liberal media sphere whose job it is,
and who your audience doesn't trust.
These things. They don't talk about these things.
Your audience doesn't trust.
That is not my fault. I have a bunch of poor people giving me $5 a month to give them something that they can't get with their cable subscription. I'm sorry.
You know that makes it worse, right? You know that Briahna Joy Gray, you know that makes it worse, right? Because you're taking $5 a month from poor people who need that $5 for their average, day-to-day life, and you're like, well, I need to offer them something new. Yeah, but okay, so if you offer them something new, that great, but the new thing you're offering is bad. That's the issue. Like you went to the drawing board and the thing you came back with was bad. It was terrible. Like you're trying to tell your audience of working class voters that they would be better off under fascism, and that's why they should vote third party. That they shouldn't worry about these vote blue arguments. My audience is poor. What do you expect me to do? Support unions and the anti-fascist candidate?
Sorry, it is not my job. People are not paying me the bulk of their minimum wage salary
No.
to have them have me tell them what a great job Biden did
But
somewhere.
listen, I'm not attacking. I just genuinely want to understand your view. So you
also,
feel
the media
like
doesn't talk about the good things I mentioned Biden do. Like, nobody talks about those.
You feel like
nobody brings those up.
Is this representative of your view? The media doesn't talk about these failings of Democrats, and so they can get the good stuff about Democrats somewhere else. I'm going to just focus on the negative things, the places where they fall short.
This reminds me of the Bad Bunny moment.
So
yeah.
you would acknowledge that if people are just consuming, for example, your podcast, that they're not getting the complete picture of what's going on.
I think that anybody consuming any one news source, particularly an independent journalist who puts out 1-hour episodes twice a week.
Oh, but you do write
many
things
too.
Many you do plenty of content.
Well, sure.
Oh wow, you're being paid $20,000 to do an hour-long show twice a week. $20,000 a month to do approximately 8 hours of work. You know what? We'll be generous. We'll say 2 or 3 hours per episode. 6 hours a week. We'll even do 8 hours a week. Just like I'm sorry. Like I don't know. I just did a 6-hour long stream. Like, wait, what do you? Oh, you do so much. What are you talking about, lady?
Sure. I mean, they're certainly not getting full news if they're watching Rising, but the content that I'm responsible for in terms of picking topics.
You literally are one of the co-hosts on Rising, Briahna.
No.
Why would you support something that you despise off screen?
Like the episode I'm going to record later today is about AI. It's a niche subject. It's not a news show. So I don't quite understand what the takeaway is from that. Of course, I'm offering what my goal is to offer to fill in the holes in what I perceive to be in the media at large.
So I
again, notice how she's like completely moved away from like whether Biden or Trump would be a better outcome for the United States. Again, notice she keeps moving away from that with like a mile-long poll. And now she's like, well, my show's about providing an alternative viewpoint and, something they can't get anywhere else. And, well, then, so your show's just, like your position doesn't matter. You're just changing it because that's what you think your audience wants. Because you've created an audience that wants you to bullshit them. Or, lead them all into the lake to drown. Like, what... Well, what Pied Pipery is this?
I understand that because that used to be much closer to my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I have shifted my thinking because I feel like when I only covered basically like Democratic Party sucks, this is their failures, et cetera, it began to create a misleading impression that the Republicans are better, that the Democrats never do anything good. And so it has caused me to reevaluate some of the coverage decisions that I would have made in the past. So this is not to, you can cover whatever the hell you want to cover,
because
but I just wanted to understand the lens you were bringing to it, because I think that makes a difference in terms of like.
And it really just seems like she exposed herself as a grifter or just someone who doesn't give a shit.
What stories you would include and the things that you would focus on.
Well, I think that might be true if you also aren't covering that Republicans are bad, which I do as well, when it's relevant and especially.
Yeah, but then if Republicans are bad and the Democratic Party is better than Republicans, and we're talking about who to vote for in a two-party duopolistic system, then who should you vote for in 2024 if it comes down to Biden versus Trump? And your answer seems to just be, oh, you should, Cornel West, vote third party. Don't vote for Biden. He said some things and he didn't do them. Shame on him. And it's just like, well, your arguments aren't consistent at all.
Especially when it's a coverage of why Republicans are bad that are different than what the mainstream.
At what point does there cease to be a difference? Well, again, this is why ultimately I don't care that much about reading intentionality, like reading what's in people's hearts. That's not a useful thing to try and preoccupy yourself with, right? All you can do is judge someone by the words that they say and the things that they do. And like when I look at the things that Briahna Joy Gray says and the things that she does, like ultimately I find that she seems to be pretty insubstantial politically and has really bad analysis and generally seems to be taking positions that profit her. And it's not, the more I watch of her, the less interesting it is, because to me it seems more and more transparent. I don't know if that's the case with those of you who've watched me cover other episodes that she's done. Would you go on her show? I mean, I'd go on anyone's show. Yeah. Like, this is what they teach you in, like, Calling Your Reps 101. It's a matter of some politicians' intern listening to you and making opinion tally marks on a notepad and presenting it to their boss later. Then they make future choices based on that. So I'm sorry, but yeah, I will call to thank you, my normally shitty state reps, when they actually do a positive thing. I want to be a weight on that scale. Yeah. Alex Jones edition? I mean, okay. I mean, I guess I draw the line somewhere, right? Like, if I'm going to be used to, like... first of all, if I'm going to be subjected to intense transphobia, I'm going to be hesitant. But also, frankly, like, I don't want to amplify negative messages. Like, but when we're talking about Alex Jones, I guess technically Alex Jones would be amplifying me, so who knows? I generally, my attitude is I want to agree to go on things when I'm asked. So, we'll see. We'll see what opens up.
Mainstream media is doing. So, for example, I just had an exchange on my last episode about this because my guests seem to be largely unaware of the legitimacy of the claims in the Georgia indictment against Trump. And there is a section of the left which takes the position that, well, Trump isn't the real problem and the media is unfair to Trump and Trump derangement syndrome.
Okay, any section of the left you're hanging out in where people are like, oh, the media isn't fair to Trump is, I would argue, probably not a section of the left.
Drum is what it is with Rachel Maddow and that. So I'm just not going to listen to any of those kind of arguments. I just don't care.
Right.
And I think, I mean, like, I don't care about it as much as many, many other things. And I think it takes up too much energy. But I also need people to understand that it wasn't just a 1/6
Yeah, Dr.
thing.
Jonesy,
It was
this is insane.
Conspiracy to overturn the election that people should take seriously. So I, and we cover those things as they come up. The trucker, whatever it is that comes up. We did a whole Tucker Carlson series last summer. Like,
Obama's gay. Did you know that? I'm just kidding.
I mean, that was an attempt to break the tension, Kyle. I appreciate it. I don't know that Briahna did. That was a real shit show. Thank you for finding me the full thing. What can we take away from that? Honestly, just pay attention to what your content creators care about. Okay? Like, if you come across someone in politics who just doesn't care, I mean, I think that can be like a real tell that the information they're feeding you isn't maybe genuine, you know? I think that there are some like hallmarks of people who are just, you know, out to feed you shit until you get tired of it and realize it's shit, you know? And I think that Briahna's one of those shit salesmen, you know? That she's trying to give you all a shit sandwich, and a lot of people on the left are like, a chocolate sandwich. Don't mind if I do. And it's just, no, it's shit. But for some people, it takes a while to realize, you know? I take away that Briahna is not any better, and in fact, probably worse than I remember, and also that Jack looks spectacular tonight. Thank you very much, Beef Torkunk. I appreciate it. I feel like I look kind of sleepy, but it is also almost 4 o'clock in the morning. How do you tell if they're stupid or don't care, though? It's a tough thing for me. Well, the poor, I think at a certain point it doesn't matter. You know? Like, it doesn't matter if they're stupid or if they don't care, if they're feeding you bad talking points, if they're feeding you bad information. You know, ultimately what matters at the end of the day is that they're feeding you bad information and you need to go elsewhere to get better information. You know, that's kind of how it breaks down, right? And, like, you can go back and forth on whether it's because of their stupidity or because they're a dishonest grifter or because of X, Y, or Z. But at the end of the day, what's really important is that you recognize that the information they're giving you can't really be trusted. And so you can move on to someone else who is more trustworthy. Which is kind of where we're at, you know? I've been sus of her for a very long time now, intentions aside, she's said and done a decent number of things that range between questionable to outright maliciously ignorant. Yeah, no, I think that she's done bad things. I think that she's said bad things. The Noam Chomsky interview is something that really alerted me to that. The fact that she continues to keep Virgil Texas in the branding for the show and listed as one of the show like members is, I think, deeply, deeply weird, and I'll mention that every single time. Hashtag where is Virgil Texas? Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of really weird stuff going on here, and I can't even begin to fathom the intentions behind it, but all I know is that the political analysis here is bad. It leads directly to fascism, and as a result, like, I'm not going to support someone who doesn't give a shit about the continued existence of democracy. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? You think people should support someone who doesn't believe in preserving even the possibility of democratic transfer of power? That is insane. If you do that, if you are supporting an authoritarian leftism, I would argue you're not a leftist at all. You know, if you are a leftist who wants to cede power to fascism, you've failed like the primary job of being a leftist. And that I don't know. It deeply bothers me because the entire point, my entire political system, belief system, is predicated on democracy and empowering people and like moving towards a workforce that is predominantly worker controlled, you know, where workers have a say in their workplace, the place where they spend the majority of their time. And someone saying they just, how does the preservation of democracy affect me? You know, What has democracy ever done for me? Like, this type of rhetoric is deeply disturbing to me. It's and it's frankly bizarre that it is as accepted as it is within American leftist politics. I don't know. If you're talking with somebody who's far left, I think that the best way to recontextualize this conversation is just to be like, voting for Joe Biden is the most anti-fascist thing you can do in an election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So if you want to vote third party, go ahead, but you are not an anti-fascist, my friend. If you are ceding power to a fascist, you are not anti-fascist. So that's how I'd recontextualize it. Hopefully that helps. Maybe one of you can try it, see how it goes. But how y'all doing? We've been going for about 6.5 hours now.